Have you ever gotten to the point where you felt completely at odds with your child or student? That you were at an impasse and you didn't know how to move past it? Have you ever seen someone that children naturally listen to and follow and then wondered, what's the secret sauce? What are they doing differently? In episode 1 of Leveling Up, we're going to tell you what that secret sauce is. And we're going to discuss how you can be champions in the lives of your children and students through connection and through a better understanding of behavior. Are you ready? Let's level up. This is Leveling Up, a podcast for educators, parents, and leaders of children who are interested in empowering learners in our schools, homes, and communities. Let's level up. Child deserves a champion, an adult who will never give up on them, who understands the power of connection and insists that they become the best they can possibly be. I love that quote. It's from a TEDx talk by a woman named Rita Pearson. And if you're in the mood for a 7-minute pump you up, I can take on the world YouTube fix, that one is well worth the listen. The talk is called Every Kid Needs a Champion. And what I love about that quote specifically is that it encapsulates what children need. They need to know that they have a champion in us. They need to know that they are safe with us, that their worth isn't on the table. There's a really great quote from Yuri Bronfenbrenner who says that every child needs at least one adult who is irrationally crazy about him or her. And unless children feel that from us, no significant learning can occur. Connection is foundational to empowerment and is going to be the focus of our podcast. We are going to focus on how we can be those champions for the children in our lives so that they can in turn become empowered learners. And the 4 components that we're going to base our conversation on are first, building their community, which is another way of saying building that connection with them. Second, we're going to talk about how to create spaces of autonomy for them. Third, we're going to talk about strengthening their mindset. And fourth, we're going to talk about how to help them live into their purpose. And what this podcast is going to do for you is that empowered adults empower children. And these foundational principles come from a school called Prenda. And Prenda's mission is to empower learners. And if you want to learn more about Prenda, you can check out the show notes below. But I want to start off with full transparency here. I work for Prenda. I was part of the team that helped create those components. I've trained hundreds of adults on these components of empowerment, and I have strived to live these in my own home. And the reason that I get so excited about these components of empowerment is because they work. And I've seen them in the lives of students, and I've seen them in the lives of my own children, and they're just too good not to share. One other thing I want to say about myself is that I am not a do as I say and not as I do type person. If I teach it, I strive to live it. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm a perfect person. I am far beyond that. I'm sure I'm going to share so many epic fails in this podcast with you, and you're going to laugh and love it, and it's going to be great. I'm on my learning journey, same as you. And I want to share you one story to help you illustrate this. I have a 4-year-old son who has the biggest brown eyes and the biggest smile you've ever seen. And whatever he does in life, he puts all of his energy into it. And he also has 2 very capable older brothers who are go-getters and who in his mind, can't do anything wrong, right? They can do everything. And a little bit ago, I started seeing in my 4-year-old son a fixed mindset starting to creep into his life and create this frozenness that he couldn't do things. Now, to give you a little bit of backstory on my son, this kid is a very capable kid. I mean, he's the type of kid that when he knows that there's that piece of candy on top of the bookshelf, he'll climb onto the washing machine, on top of the washing machine, climb up the shelves and get that piece of candy. Or he's the kid who moves the trash can and gets on the trash can and climbs over the wall to get his bike on the other side. So when I started seeing this fixed mindset creep in, I knew that he was feeling disempowered, and I knew that what I needed to focus on was connection and his mindset. So it was chore time, and he just melted down that it was time to take out the trash. I can't do it. I don't know how to do it. And so what I started doing with him is I started showing him evidence that he could do it, that he was doing it. And let me tell you, it took a lot of time. And there were funny moments where, looking back, I just have to laugh. I'll tell you one. So first of all, like, it started off with celebrating the smallest successes, right? Oh, you looked at the trash. That's the first step, right? You took a step to the trash. You're well on your way to doing this, buddy. Showing him evidence that he could do it. And weeks down, he was pulling out the trash. He finally got to the point where he felt like he could take the trash out of the trash can and walk outside, but he still wasn't sure he could walk it across the backyard and put it in the trash can. So what he did is he dragged the trash across the ground in our backyard, which tore a huge hole in the trash bag, scattered all the contents of the trash around, and I could have focused on the trash scattered all across my backyard. But because I knew the components of empowerment, and because I had built a strong connective relationship with him, I was able to be his champion again and again and again. And I was able to look at that trash all over the backyard and say, hey, buddy, do you remember 2 weeks ago when you couldn't even look at the trash? Look at you now. Look at what you've done. You should feel really proud of yourself. Let me help you pick up this trash. And we were able to work on it. And it took lots of time, and it took small steps. But I'll tell you, I'll never forget the day when he looked into my eyes with his big brown eyes, and he said to me, Mom, taking out the trash is my best job. And to this day, he sees himself as the best person in our home to take out the trash. Now that's empowerment. That is long-lasting change. That is a mindset shift that will help him throughout his entire life. And I want to pull 2 principles from this story. The first principle I want to pull is connection. Let's go back to this quote from Rita Pearson. She says, every child deserves a champion, an adult who will never give up on them, who understands the power of connection. Now, what you didn't see in that story was all the intention I had put toward creating connection with my son. And I'm not saying that in any way of saying I'm a perfect parent, but I'm saying that I was able to put forth that intention of connection because I know how critical it is to empowerment. It is the first step. It is the first step for my son to become empowered, and it was the first step for me to be his champion. Now, we're going to talk more about what connection looks like and sounds like and feels like in the next episode. But let me tell you one reason why connection is that first step in empowered learning. And it's actually based on neurology. So your brain has 3 sections. It has your inner section, your middle section, and your outer section. And your inner section asks the question, am I safe? And your middle section asks the question, am I loved? And your outer section asks the question, what can I learn? And the neat thing about this is that unless the inner section and the middle section can say, yes, I am safe, and yes, I am loved, then the outer section, your prefrontal cortex, where all of that executive functioning happens, your problem solving, your planning for the future, all those things, that's the state, the brain state we want our learners to be in. That state cannot be fully engaged if they don't feel safe and if they don't feel loved. If your inner brain and your middle brain aren't satisfied with those answers, then your outer brain can't learn. And so if we want to be those supportive adults in our students' lives, we have to make sure that they know that they are safe and they are loved. Now, connection. So I told you that connection is important for a learner to feel empowered, but connection is also important for a supportive adult to become a champion. And I want to illustrate this by sharing an example that Gordon Neufeld in his book, Hold On to Your Children, shares. He talks about, now Gordon Neufeld is a child developmentalist. He's world renowned. He's a specialist on connection. He talks about the need for adults to feel connection with their children using this analogy. He talks about a mother cat, and he talks about how, mother cats, after they've had a litter of kittens, they're getting walked on and scratched and bitten, and the mother cat just takes it. And he says the mother cat takes it because she feels a connection to the litter. But he says when a new kitten is introduced into the litter, it's really apparent that mother cat does not have patience with that new kitten. She bats it away, and the only way that new kitten is going to survive in that litter is if the mother cat and that new kitten can form a connection. And so what I want to share with that is that in order for us to level up and become the champions in our children's lives, we need to make sure we prioritize moments of connection with those children. And we're going to talk about how that looks for an educator, and we're going to talk about how that looks for a parent in future episodes. So that's principle one, connection. Children need connection to become empowered learners. We need connection to become their champions. The second point I want to talk about is behavior. And I'm just going to touch on this really quick. But in today's pop culture, parenting tips and educator tips all focus a lot on behavior. This student's behavior is bothering me. How do I change this behavior? And I want to share with you today that behavior is not what we should be focusing on. Behavior is what comes downstream. What you want to focus on is upstream. You want to focus on resolving the incompatibilities that are happening here that are causing the behavior. I like to think of behavior as the symptom, to a bigger problem. And it takes a champion to look beyond that bad behavior. And we've all been there where we're just like focusing on the behavior and the behavior is driving us nuts. And I will tell you, in that moment when you are annoyed and the behavior is driving you nuts, you are not connected to that child. And the best thing you can do is to step back and reconnect. And I promise you, you will be able to show up in a better way and be their champion. My son was not being lazy. He wasn't being defiant. He was frozen in a fixed mindset. And had I not been building that connection, I would not have been his champion in that moment. And I would have only seen the behavior for what it was, and it would have driven me crazy. What he needed from me, just like Rita Pearson says, he needed a champion who knew his heart and who saw his greatness, and connection is where that begins. So I invite you to take this journey with me. Your challenge this week is to take time to intentionally connect with the children that you support, because now more than ever, they need champions, and that starts with connection. So join us next Monday as we dive into how we can connect with our children by collecting their eyes, nods, and smiles. Don't forget to leave reviews. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast. And as always, look higher and level up. Thanks for joining today. If you liked what you heard, don't forget to like and subscribe to the podcast and share with a friend. If you're interested in learning more about Prenda, you can check out their website at prenda.com. And finally, the opinions and comments shared in this podcast are not the official opinions and comments of Prenda. The purpose of this podcast is to continue an ongoing conversation about education and empowerment.